I was taught my Navy training, there's two factors. There's one, and it's coming out for the air of my hand, is deny the enemy the use of the sea. That's phase one. Phase two is assure your ability to use the sea, okay? So commerce raiding is denying the enemy the use of the sea. That is defensive. Offensive is carrying the war to the enemy on land, okay? Is using the sea to transport supplies. Yes, I know we are talking about sending supplies to Britain and cutting them off. Yes, I get that. And it could be a gray area by definition. Yes, I'll grant you that. But I'm going to say all you're doing is doing the denial of the sea. You're not then, by doing that, allowing Germany to use surface warfare ships to invade Britain or someplace like that. Basically, offensive warfare from the sea comes down to amphibious warfare. Whether it could just be a few ships' crews, a fleet, a naval fleet showing up on one of these Leeward Islands in the 18th century and landing ships' crews to take over because there's just 500-man garrison. We just brought 2,000 sailors, with muskets, and they take it over because there isn't that much of a garrison on one of these islands. It varied from island to island, how big of the garrison there was and how good the forts were and whatnot. That would be an offensive operation, is to taking over territory. So that is using, yes, and also using the sea to supply yourself. Is that just a defensive measure? Again, we can sort of parse that out a little bit in language, but if you divide the two stages of sea operations, deny it to the enemy's use, and then be able to, like for the allies, because it's not just the Americans, there's British, Canadians, and whatnot, to be able to use the sea, we have to then, protect our ships from submarines, but we have to also protect them from aircraft attacks and make sure that yes, we did lose a few ships coming into D-Day, so there was some attacks, there were a few ships, some lost to mines and whatnot, but that is an offensive use of the sea. So Australia, and the one thing I was thinking about might be offensive use would be the use of nuclear weapons from submarines. And that could be, because that's like an aircraft carrier, you doing major airstrikes along the sea. So whether it's nuclear, and a few Tomahawk cruise missiles, well, yeah, and some little, minor operation and, against, or, I don't know, like when, I think it was Tomahawks or something that Bill Clinton fired at Khartoum, or where, back in the 90s, I don't know. But, some of that might be, but really against, a few non-nuclear cruise missiles fired at China really isn't that much of a offensive operation. It might be taking out, some coastal defenses or some ships in a port. Yeah, but really it would be nuclear weapons would be the only sustained submarine attacks that would be offensive, in my opinion. And none of what we're talking about Australia is intended. They're all very much saying they're not becoming a nuclear weapon nation. They're going to just use nuclear power, not nuclear weapons. But obviously the ships that they're getting from America, presumably, are not going to have nuclear weapons on board, presumably, especially the ones they're getting from America, very well may have had nuclear weapons on board at one stage. So it wouldn't necessarily take however long it would. I don't know that they're somehow being disabled from loading back in nuclear missiles back into the Virginia-class submarines. And I don't know what the British submarines, the future to be designed, I don't know how much they've got designed. And of course, they wouldn't tell us publicly how nuclear weapon capable they might be, the ones built for Australia. But yeah, so presumably they have submarines that could readily, within days, if not hours, be re-equipped with nukes, in a port and whatnot, but are in essence a defensive operation, because I said 100 submarines out here. Yeah, they're going to stop commerce and ships moving, but what are we going to do? Send half of the crews of 100 submarines, 30 men or 20 men or whatever per submarine ashore to invade China, invade a particular city. That's pathetic. Again, yeah, okay, commandos coming ashore, that might be sort of considered an offensive operation, but yeah, it's not offensive war. That's special warfare operations, which are sort of a different one. Okay, seeing India. I'm sorry, I'm catching everything up. Didn't have any threats from Pakistan because we'd have to worry about China. I think India have to work on its navy. Oh, India's working on its navy. Yeah, and you're trying to get more carriers working there. Have you tried? Yeah, a little bit, but not really much on Victoria 2. I do have the game, but I really haven't played it much. Just time. And I don't have all the mods or all the DLCs, just some of the basic element. Naval blockade is different from convoy hunting, I believe. Yeah, well, no, I'm no, because convoy hunting here for, if we're talking in World War II context, convoy hunting is a naval blockade of Britain. I mean, that's what it's functionally trying to be. Sure, if they happen to catch a troop convoy going somewhere, but the Germans know most troop convoys are highly protected by destroyers, so you probably aren't going to, it's probably going to be suicide to seriously go after, unless you're super lucky or something, to seriously go after troop convoys. So offensive operations are against well-protected convoys that aren't that. So there's mostly blockades of, supply and good and food transports to and from Britain. Obviously, they would mostly leave empty going back to America. And, so they'd love to sink the empty ships. I mean, they'd rather sink a full ship of stuff, but they'd sink an empty one just to deny it to the enemy. That's, in essence, a blockade of Britain. When the second happy time along the American coast, yeah, it's disrupting because America, didn't have lots of pipelines like it does today, and definitely did use train cars to move things like oil and gasoline, tanker cars on the train. But it still used a lot of coastal tankers just because it was convenient and cheap and good. And so sinking them will disrupt America's economics. So that, but really it was just shutting down more stuff before it could be sent to Britain, because it's because America, you sink 10 tankers along the American coast. We'll just give America a little while. They'll build new tankers, but also they'll build new tanker rail cars, and you're not going to sink them. America can just switch like that. That isn't going to affect America. But by sinking the ships, it affects how much tankers can move fuel to, whether it's to Britain or to, offensive operations. So the submarines are always on a grand scale, not an individual operation like Pistorius or whatever that's trying to drop some spies off or something. But on a grand scale, it is always about the blockade of Britain in World War II. Yeah, I know Germany got some submarines into the Mediterranean and blah, blah, blah. But again, it's primarily about blockading Britain in the World War II context. Better representation of the era, I think. Yeah, I played the old EU 1 and 2s way back when. So Arno's probably around to sing, but he sometimes falls asleep, I think. But yeah. Okay. Let's see if we can get to producing some more things. So we got to Sudeten. What more equipment do we... Well, okay. Let's be a little bit planned about this. Let's look and see some of our needs. What... Okay, mountain warfare, paratrooper equipment. We're catching up on paratrooper equipment. Paratroopers are, we got one division up here. They're always going to be fairly small. We're not going to do huge paratrooper armies, even if we could. Okay, we're doing pretty good for equipment. But I think we could do more trucks. So, and light vehicles. We'll do more trucks and light vehicles. Once we get the Kuba wagon, I will convert it over to the Kuba wagon. Okay, so at least one more on the truck. Got the heavy trucks. I think we're doing reasonably well. I don't know how many we're really going to need, but light vehicles. Okay, so a little better motorization. Yeah, we can do one more Panzer II. Okay, that's good. Okay, 2 a week. Let's throw in one more each of those. And that leaves us with one more. And instead of adding another aircraft type, which I would like to, 2 a month, we'll get these into a little more. So we'll do that. Oh, of course, I remember the train accident. Saying that was very, very bad. Plan to start. Plan is to either sometime after the historical. Maybe I might do my sort of, for me, traditional of start the invasion of Poland in spring and get that done quick enough for a summer invasion, 1940. Talking about invasion of the French. In my opinion, well, Hitler gambles on whether the Western Allies are going to come in. He believes they're not, or he wouldn't have done the invasion of Poland when he did it. But even if they were planning on going to do it more or less when they did do it, he would have waited until spring so that they could rapidly, because the German mentality going from looking at the Franco-Prussian War and even wars before that, but definitely the Franco-Prussian War to World War I, they want to deliver a hammer blow rapidly to France. Partially before France can mobilize, but they probably know that France is set up to mobilize rapidly. Partially to do a hammer blow before the British can get there strongly, but also just the idea of fast, early, hit them hard, and push in before they're as ready as they could be, whatever they could be. So the delay is just because of the time it takes to take out Poland, and then the weather worsening enough that a winter offensive, they're not ready for the offensive anyways. They're just not ready for it, even if they could have pulled it off. And a winter offensive, as we see, the Ardennes offensive in 44, 45 at the very end of Christmas and whatnot there, in 44, can be done in the winter. Whether the Germans think they can do it well or not in the winter is another question, but even then, they're still not ready to do it. It takes them a while. So if you do proper planning and get ready, spring 41 or 40 is the better date to that, if you knew that was going to do it. I always make big divs just so they stay. Yeah, well, big divs are one thing, but I'm saying large numbers. I don't know what this 7th Flieger is. Yeah, the 7th Flieger, this was given to us by an event, I believe. This is sort of in training, and I think it will get bigger as time goes on. But the 7th Flieger is historically the 1st division there, 1st Paratrooper Division. I know it says 7th, but it is. You'll be shocked. Okay, well, what are you going to say? I'm not shocked by a lot. Might be surprised, but yeah. Just make one battalion strong and drop them on VPs. Yeah, that is sort of a gamer move within this thing, I would agree. Okay, the Munich Agreement, yes, peace for now. Okay, well, we've won Spain in October 1938. I forget I know it was I think fairly early in 39 is when when Franco wins the war, so it happens a little earlier here, not by a whole huge lot, but okay. Okay, once this is done, we're gonna come over here and I think it's going to be a quick event, or not event, but And national focus, yeah, lessons from the Spanish campaign, 28 days. We'll do that. That will help us with a bunch of different technologies and reduce ahead of time penalties for a few things. So we'll do that as soon as we can. It is politics. Well, you can say it. Okay, at the end of the Spanish Civil War, regiment doctrines. Okay, so that. No, close. Regiment doctrines. That is here. Okay, so, well, that we could, again, we'll may get a bonus on some of that. Spearhead technology. And we'll look around a bit. 38, we could do that. But maybe spirit technology. Gain a lot more experience. And I'm sort of kind of waiting. Okay, we're going to do this now. So I've not been training my forces. I know I don't like to because I use up equipment, which I don't agree with how the game functions, not the mod. But Indian politics is the worst. Well, politics is messy wherever you go. And if you recognize in your own country that it isn't the best, you're doing well because you know, because people often think, well, in our country things do work better than others. You know, I mean, just on all countries, including my own country, politics are a bit crazy. Not just now, but just politics always have really been a bit much. I've done my time in politics and sort of kind of know. Well, I ran for Congress once. Didn't get anywhere near winning or anything like that, but I did run. Yeah, that's about the number. 280 is about the number that I understood, and a lot injured. A lot injured, I understand. Minorly or majorly. Yeah. Well, there's certain political movements. Yes, politics is war by other means, absolutely. Let's put you on trains, get you there faster and not use up much equipment in doing so. Okay. We're just going to, like, come say hi to our Czech neighbors here. And politics becomes the most divisive when there is not shared agreement on basic values and goals. And America is definitely losing its shared agreement on things. Hell, there are people, we're not talking about some nut job somewhere. We're talking about major elected people that want to get rid of free speech in America because they want hate speech laws. Hate speech laws mean that you don't have free speech. I don't care about Canada. Deal with, let them be what they want. And so, yeah, and in America, with a foundational element is free speech, you have elected leaders openly saying that, oh, hate speech laws are a good idea. They somehow think, well, it's correct speech or free speech because only speech that's good is, should be free or whatever. I don't know, but and so when you can't agree upon something basic like that within your country, yeah, that ain't good. Okay, so this cavalry division, we can look at this template, has semi-motorized infantry, has 1 regiment of armored cars. And yeah, that's about what historically. Again, they did have this well, whatever you call it, their Schnell division, their fast division, because that's really what it was. There were some cavalry units, like it says here, and I don't know all of the order of battle, but what they did have was some tanks. Again, they were just the machine gun equipped tankettes of Italian production and design, the CV-33s, but that was it. Okay. Yeah, it was that vehicle there. That has well, it's meant to be driven in both ways. There are a driver looking in each direction for this armored car here. Marine code contains 72 seats per coast. The slippery soap. My country is very anti-free speech, to my knowledge. Yeah. You said you're Latvia, Elizabeth? Czech beer is the best. Too good to let them have it alone. Recommend taking over the country. We'll see. About 8 coaches are completely destroyed. Yeah, I don't know if that means everybody's dead in that or just injured. I don't know. I don't have, obviously, any intelligent information on it. Completely destroyed car does not necessarily mean everybody dies, but I don't know. I mean, it is a horrific accident. I don't think it was like a sabotage attack or anything. I think it's just an accident, whether something that could have been, helped or not is another question. I don't have a good answer on that either, obviously. Okay. Okay, so we're getting some more of the, so I wanted a fair number of the heavy fighters to go after bombers. We're going to add another thing of Stukas here. Try to get our air power up. Okay, so we're expanding our co-op military civilian industry, which definitely was happening. Now, okay, 2 a month. Way under, but I want to add. Okay, we got the flying boats. Maybe we'll just add more transports. Yeah, let's get transports going. Get some of the luxury items going. Okay, and I wanted to get the lessons from the Spanish campaign to do it. Get it done now. Lithuania, yeah. Oh, Lithuania. Okay, yeah. Down here. Yep. I'd love to visit those places someday, but it's not going to be anytime soon, I'm sure. Hello, Eric. I'm glad to hear you're back. That means you made it safely. I presume you're not in the hospital or something. Eric went on a special mission. I don't know how much he's going to say here, but Twitch has added to their new terms of service, and then they pulled back some of the elements, but they didn't pull back this thing is no multicasting. Well, very good. So I can't, according to their terms of service, I can't broadcast to Twitch and YouTube and Rumble and all that at the same time, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to keep doing it. And yeah, if you notice, I spread out the lettering so that a really intelligent AI bot would pick it up, but I don't think Twitch uses really intelligent AI bots. So you get it, but so I'm just going to keep going with that. Oh, I understand. Yeah, yeah. How much of an ass should I look like? I guess I'll look like a big ass here. Person who's speaking out their butt. My understanding is that within the, shall we say, Indian culture, there is sort of a bit of fatalism, predestination. Like if it's meant to be, it'll be. So whatever, kind of thing. But so there's some of that going on, I think, meaning they don't overly looking at Indian traffic and whatnot. There's a bit of fatalism and just whatever happens, don't really care kind of thing. And I may be wrong about that. Singh knows better than I do and can correct me. I think that's part of it. Is why it happens, and this is why, to a point, this whole accident happened. Is at least I seem to see videos, and relatively recent ones, of huge numbers of people sitting on top of trains in India. I'm not just talking 50 years ago. I'm saying relatively recently, if not current. People overcrowding cars in India, either whether on within the city, city transportation systems. Or between cities, trains, way overcrowding, where we would not allow, that overcrowding in America. And I know there's just lots and lots of people and maybe not a very good, transportation system. I get that. And there's a lot of people need to get to work, and there's a lot of people that need to go places, and they all need to go, and there's not enough trains. I get that. But if you really freaking cared, India, as a government, or as a people, if you really cared, you would adopt safety procedures much better than, and practice them, not just have them officially, much better. I mean, you don't maybe have to live up to what Western Europe has as safety procedures and whatnot, but you got to adopt much better safety procedures if you really cared. And I could see the Indian government that doesn't want to have a major, outrage over casualties, suppressing the real number, because if they really knew how many people died, there might be more upset than they are now. Not that they're not upset. And why didn't the railway people enforce more rigorous safety procedures? So yeah, I mean, that's my commentary on it. And if I'm all wrong, I'm wrong. I don't, about the cultural stuff, but that's what I understand. Russia and India played a big tug of war with us. I'm not, Russia and Germany, I should say, played a big, I'm not sure if we were involved in the Kurland pocket or not. Well, the Kurland pocket is up there. Don't know how much exactly what you're talking about, Elizabeth. Okay, picked up something really interesting, by the way, not one but two Norwegian field telephone. Well, good, you got two, so you can set them up and talk to each other. I mean, you've just had one. Well, I mean, who are you going to talk to? Don't know if the derailment would result in every seat being filled, resulting in death, though. Yeah, I don't know. The Polish have so many cavalry divisions. Well, yeah, good for them. Now, I don't know what these cavalry divisions are like. Okay, well, we're hovering over it. Somewhere between 1 and 11 cavalry brigades. Here, I mean, that's good information. There's either 1, or there's 2, or there's 3, or there's 4, or there's 5, or there's 6, or there's 7, or there's 8, or there's 9, or there's 10, or there's 11. We're not sure, but there's somewhere in between that in this one little pocket here. Okay. So I don't know how big these quote unquote divisions are. They may be more cavalry brigades or something. I don't know. People have reservations, but what about the people that don't have reservations? We also have coaches for unreserved people. Yeah, but you just deal with the max, and then you see Japan squeezing people into cars too. I know, but they do have a lot more safety procedures around. So, Kurland pocket consists. Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I know about the Kurland pocket in general. Actually, mentioning the Kurland pocket, I saw a fascinating bit of film just within the last 24 hours dealing with the Kurland pocket. It was a Soviet film. You see a few Soviet soldiers standing around. But what they had done is they had collected, and it looked from the film, all operational armored vehicles of Germany that they captured, supposedly, from the Courland pocket. That's what the video was labeled as. I mean, it was originally film, obviously, but and it was fascinating. They had lots and lots of armored half tracks. The 250, the big one. I keep getting confused with the 250 or the 251 is the big one. Lots of armored half tracks still, and all the armored half tracks all had canvas covers over their, or virtually all. I mean, one or two didn't, but all had canvas covers over the, the fighting compartment, which normally I don't see that. So maybe they're just normally when I photograph, they're just tucked away, and when they moved them, parked them there, they just unhooked them and took them out and hooked them on top. A large number of them had a large number, and there was probably 50 or more of the half tracks. A large number, and probably almost like a third of them, had the short 75 millimeter gun in there, which obviously is a support fighting weapon. So at the time of the surrender of the Courland pocket, these vehicles were still functional. Which I was sort of surprised, because, a lot of the armored half tracks, just have the machine guns on them. You don't necessarily want to expose them, especially you're doing defensive pocket jobs, because, hey, they're just going to be targets and they're not going to really bring anything. The machine gun, entrenched in earth is going to probably be, and especially with a, wooden log and stone and earth bunker that you could make in a few days or whatever, or a few hours, even if with enough people and equipment, is much better than a flimsy half track to shoot a machine gun out of. But shooting the 75 millimeter, gun, the one from the Panzer IV, early Panzer IV, a lot of those were still operational, and I believe these were all operational vehicles. But still, a lot of those, a lot of tanks. I don't think I remember seeing any Panthers or Tigers, but lots of Panzer IVs, a few Panzer IIIs. And what was really sort of amazing to me were 3 T-34, they looked to be T-34-85s, not the earlier T-34 76 guns, but the T-34-85s. And all 3 of them, after the Germans had captured them, had added the German cupola, where the commander gets in out. So instead of the standard Soviet top doors, they had cut out those, and cut in and welded in the German cupola, so that it has that round sort of tall thing, so that the commander can look without getting his head out of the tank. Watch some of my videos playing postscriptum, or when we get to do some Hell Let Loose, how often I'm, as the tank commander, have my head out and get shot, and have to respawn and run to get back to the tank. And Eric and the other crewmen keep chiding me for not to do this. So it was really important that they take the time to add, the Germans thought, to add the cupola, and which is a bit of time and effort. And they had laying about somewhere, or salvaged off, damaged or destroyed, because that's probably where they got the cupolas too, other German tanks, which is probably real quickly to do it. But we're putting on the turret bustle, the box that's on the back of the Panzer IVs and Panzer. Let's see how, again, because I don't know who's going to, no, I don't want to be here. I want to be here. From this to this, what you see back here, this is just straight. These are all through here. They're all straight. I don't know why why the D has that one and doesn't. They're all straight in the back. The turrets actually are. This is just a thin, non-armored, but thin metal box, just sort of welded on for supplies, basically, of maybe parts to tools or parts for the tank, or just literally food and sleeping bags and tents or whatever. I don't know. Just a supply dump. These were, and that would be a quick thing, but welding on this is what I'm talking about. The cupola were stuck on top of the T-34. So they had 3 of them in this captured part. Plus, they had lots of 88 millimeter anti-tank guns and a lot of other stuff. Really fascinating video to watch of this is what the Soviets had taken out, and very neatly lined up, and in some sort of depot, collection point. So I don't know if this was from a particular division that had surrendered, an armored division that was trapped up there, or just a lot of random tanks that got trapped up there, and at least 3 at some point, whether before or after becoming part of the Courland pocket, they had upgraded 3 T-34-85s, so presumably they had, at least for a while, enough ammunition to keep, 85 millimeter ammunition to keep them operating, that they'd captured. But I thought it was fascinating that they had that all three of them had the upgrade of the cupola particularly. So that just tells me a little bit. And of course, repainted with German Balkan crosses, very big, and other things like that on these things. Soviets had a lot of cavalry divisions in the 30s, but don't know about 41 onward. Soviets used lots and lots of horses up until the end. Okay, Singh, you have a very good evening. Thanks for hanging out with us. France still has operational German tanks. I saw a French movie with one running a Tiger II and Panthers, unfortunately. Can't remember the name of the movie. I've been searching for it for a long time. Well, France has very few operational running German tanks, and they're all in the museum as far as I understand. Now, it's a government, it's the is Saumur, which is part of their training center. They have a museum there. I'd love to go visit. It's open to the public. But yeah, and they have a few running tanks. They're not like a bunch of them anymore. It's just like one each of things that actually run, as far as I understand. I could be wrong, but I don't know everything. I know that Germans like to repurpose everything they got their hands on. Yeah, I know, but probably 80% of more of the T-34 earlier models with the 76, there's various turrets on them. T-34 76s, most of them do not have the German cupola added to them. Most of the photos that I've seen, at least. Now, I don't know if I'm looking at 10 photos of one tank at different point. They're not like walking around one tank, but it's maybe the same tank photographed over a 6-month period. And so they look different photos over 6 months. So I'm not always sure what I'm seeing, but yeah, both the Red Army. Oh yeah, well, folk, the Wehrmacht, the German army, had one and one only cavalry division during World War II. One and one only. It's sort of a myth that Germany had lots of cavalry divisions. Now, a lot of divisions would have a cavalry unit as part of their reconnaissance elements. I'm not quite sure whether you call them a regiment, a battalion, or a company. But a lot, and there were also independent, I believe they would style them regiments, but they, again, might just be a battalion strength, independent cavalry units attached to corps headquarters, so to work as reconnaissance cavalry, but not as part of a division, but as part of corps stuff. But they had one and one only cavalry division. Now that's German. That's proper German hairs. Now they recruited a lot of foreign cavalry, Cossack cavalry divisions, some Yugoslav, there's one Russian cavalry division that's made up of a few old guys from the Russian Civil War and mostly their children, operating the Balkans. So they're recruiting up a lot of foreign troops on cavalry, and some of those are divisions. But there's only one German, that's why I'm specifying German, cavalry division in World War II. Lots of other, independent regiments or battalions or smaller formations attached as part of infantry divisions, but just one division. So just keep that in mind. Finland flew the swastika there. Well, they had a different version. Yeah. That swastika predates the Nazi use of the swastika. Finland used the swastika officially until like the 1970s. They weren't in NATO. For their sort of version in the army, they used it. Yes. Now the SS is not part of the German army, and again, most of the divisions that are in the SS that are cavalry, if not all of them. The divisions, mind you, I'm trying to remember here, but yeah, all the divisions are again made up of foreigners that are cavalry. And several of the divisions, because I have lists around here, several of the divisions, if you look at the full list, they didn't exist all at once. A couple of them had gotten destroyed functionally, and the remnants of it were formed in a new division, so with a different number. So it's not like, if there are like 5 or 6 of them that were, cavalry divisions in the Waffen SS, only like 2 or 3 of them existed at any one time. And then they get destroyed enough, and then the personnel from that division was shoved over into this other newly forming division, and off it would be, that kind of thing. But that's the SS, which is different than the army, the German army, because I did say the German army. Tanks and other vehicles. The Munster Museum. Yeah, I don't know how much of their vehicles are running in the Munster Museum. I just don't know. For the longest time, all of the museums just let the vehicles be parked there. It is only really in the last 20 years have they really got to the point that they try to get them running and have them running. And they realize, partially because of what the British Tank Museum has done, that it's a big tourist attraction, which will bring them lots of money to be able to actually drive a Tiger around. I mean, just a little bit around the backyard of their museum or whatever. But to hear it and see it move. So it's only a recent phenomenon that museums try to get them running, where they might have been theoretically running, but no gasoline, no oil in the system. You try to turn it on, it won't turn on, because you got to keep the things lubed up and cleaned out. And so maybe all the parts were there, but they weren't running, that you could turn them on. It's only recently that they've really, and now I know some of you guys are less 20 years old, so that's maybe all your life. But back in the 70s and 80s, most museums didn't care what it looked like inside the tank, most museums. And if it was running or not, it's just sort of a big thing to park there and let people ooh and ah at them. So yeah, of course, had to climb the Panther to take some cool. Yes, they had cavalry. Oh, absolutely, Pickle. If you look at my mod, Third Reich Events, I cover the Ritter SA as well as the Ritter SS, which means Rider SA and SS. They very much had that. But again, the SA is not part of the German army. That's why I was very specific on what I was saying. There was Italian cavalry in charge in 42, but I think most cavalry divisions only use them for transportation. Mostly. Mostly you would see them with the idea of, sort of dragoons as mounted infantry. But there were exceptions, and some of them are very much like they're riding along, patrolling or whatever. There's a bunch of guys eating lunch over there, and they're Russians, let's go now because a horse can move very fast, guys. It can get up to that gallop and go very fast. To where with a bolt action rifle aimed, not just work the action and go bang, but actually try to hit your target, you might only get 1 or 2 shots off, realistically, for most people. And even the sort of better shot might just get 3 or 4 shots, and they may all still miss, even though you're aiming at a moving target charging at you. So a horse charging at you is tremendous and fast. Now, that sort of surprise encounters, because it's generally better to get your machine, because the cavalry had machine guns, get your machine gun set up, get everything ready, and you're going to fight on foot. But it did happen. There are conditions, and there are also conditions in some of the. Now I know there are some of the film stuff around the Stalingrad campaign and pushing through the winter here. Now I know most if not all of the film is staged as opposed to actually happened in combat. Now whether they did it right or not, but in a big open terrain, and this is something that again, and after this I'm going to end this episode, keep the live stream going. I've read about a lot of different things. One was a biography of General Wrangel, which was the last general of the White Army in the South down here. He served in World War I and all the way through. he was a Russian general, but often commanding Cossack, which I know are a type of Russians, but Cossack troops. Because so through the Russian Civil War, his forces were undersupplied. So often it was, at times there may have been the Cossacks. Most all the Cossacks had a rifle. Most of them. I'm not going to say every one, but I think more than 80 or 90% of his forces had rifles. But sometimes they had literally no ammunition, or other times they had 4 or 5 rounds of ammunition for their rifles. They might have more ammunition set up for their machine guns, and they actually had their machine guns, like Maxim machine guns, in like a 4-wheel buggy that was like maybe originally designed as like a passenger buggy, and they would tow it behind 2 or 4 horses, and sometimes use it on the gallop, shooting on the back of this thing. But they used that, but they'd still leave it on the buggy and just turn it around and shoot. So they may have had money or ammo for the machine gun, but they literally had, and they may or may not have much ammo for their pistols. They figured during their experience during the Russian Civil War, in which the Bolshevik machine guns, the Maxims mostly, had ammunition, and often the positions immediately around them had barbed wire around them. They figured that charging horses straight at those machine guns would have less casualties than they tried to do fire and maneuver and, crawling and cover across the big open Russian steppe, around a town, the sort of garrison for the town. Because during the Russian Civil War, most of the time a lot of it was fought along rail lines, which again, I'm so glad we have rail lines here. That's some of my reasoning. When I was arguing with Podcat, Don Lynn, however you want to pronounce his name. Oh yeah, no, we have infrastructure that does it. Yeah, for here it does it, because rails are going most everywhere, and once in a while, yeah, this province may not connect to that province via the rail, but there's rails density high enough. It's probably much denser than what we see here in actuality. But once we get out here, it really matters. And so a lot, like the Russian Civil War, a lot of it is fought along the rails. So there is not a continuous line of defense way out here. There's maybe patrolling forces, there may be an occasional company or whatever, but you could easily move around and miss each other. And they were garrisoning the rail lines and garrisoning the towns. And so there's a lot of open stuff here that, whether with or without surprise, that, and the Cossacks that he commanded knew how to do fire and maneuver as sort of infantry. It wasn't that they were ignorant to it. But because of the shortage of ammunition, including machine gun ammunition, but just the shortage of ammunition and the time it takes to, whether it's all crawling or while a bunch of guys are going bang, bang, laying down and going bang, bang, cover fire, and one guy pops up and runs, 20 feet or 15 meters or something for you Europeans, and then plop back down, and then another guy pops up, doing those kind of leapfrogging maneuvers, to cover your approach. You're going to end up having more casualties doing that, what we would think of as a modern combat technique. Because again, the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, had machine guns, but they weren't everywhere, or, huge numbers of them, more than the whites did, at least in most of the incidents. And because the whites would get them generally more ammunition for them. The shock, the overwhelming, including just all the horses, just the ground starts to vibrate. My understanding, when you see these horses coming at you, all the weight, all that emotional, physical shock of these horses just coming at you. But even if the machine gun stays machine gunning the whole time, they're going to take fewer casualties charging straight at that effectively. I mean, after they sort of surround a little bit, but effectively going straight at those machine guns. How fast those horses would go, and they'd often lose maybe more horses than men just because they're bigger targets. But especially on the men, loss on the men, they would lose fewer doing a cavalry charge than they would do with, again, fire and maneuver. Now, if you go to modern Kalashnikovs or M16s, well, that's probably too many machine guns to go against. But so in a steppe plane, so I could see the Russian counteroffensive, like I've seen in some filming that they did, and I think it represents more or less what happened. But again, it was staged after the fact. If you're coming out of the as the dawn of a winter's day. So I don't know what would it be that around 11 a.m. noon, whatever. But coming riding out of the white mist, a Soviet cavalry division at an Italian dug-in infantry division, that the shock, that impact, whether they're going to come at you and now if the Cossacks definitely use swords when they're coming in, but they love the Mauser broom handle pistol, come in and just shoot with pistols if they have the ammunition close up, maybe not quite touching you, but within feet of you. But however, the Soviets charging in, whether they had the PPS submachine guns or the swords or pistols, you really you can sort of kind of shoot a bolt action carbine, but not really while you're moving. That's for when you get off the horse, or if the horse is going to stand still or something. But they probably did do cavalry charges out of the snow across at the enemy just to get across that terrain very fast. A proper German division that isn't too far spread out, because how far do you spread out a division? A proper German division with all of its machine guns, down at the squad level, an MG-34 at every squad, 3 per platoon, properly dug in. Probably it's, and if it's close, dense enough packed division, you're probably going to have that cavalry division chewed up. But, and I'm not saying anything necessarily about the quality of the troops. We can talk about that. That's not all Romanian, Hungarian, or Italian divisions were equal, but still, so some were more willing to fight than others. Some were more skilled than others. Some of them had better leadership than others. But they still didn't have nearly the density of machine guns, nearly the density of supply for rifles or submachine guns or light artillery that would be firing, or mortars that would be firing at them. They just didn't have that density of equipment. I mean, you don't get more dense really than the Americans. British come close, Germans come close in theory, but not in practice. The Americans are the most dense. But what we're talking about is the thing. Yeah, probably a cavalry charge is a good idea, an actual good idea to do in that kind of situation. So it is a reality, but a lot of the time they were just used as as dragoons, as you ride the horses until you see the enemy. They're way out there. You see them with binoculars. You get off and you go fight them. And riding takes effort. Riding isn't like riding in a car. It takes physical effort. You get tired doing it, but it's not you don't get as tired, especially for short distance, because infantry and cavalry move virtually at the same, on a strategic sense. Infantry and cavalry divisions move at the same speed. Tactically, cavalry will move faster, and for the amount of distance traveled, not only faster, they'll be less tired. Now, for the same number of hours, they may be equally tired, maybe, depending on what you're talking about. But you can also put a little bit more supplies on the horse. Though the more weight you put on the horse, it becomes a problem. It really does. Human in the saddle and his basic equipment and basic backpack is really about all you really want to do for a horse, unless you're going to walk the horse, lead the horse or whatever. So you're really not going to carry a lot more supplies. But that infantryman, so if you're going to march for 2 hours or ride a horse for 2 hours, you're going to get a greater distance on the horse for 2 hours. Maybe be equally tired, but again, you've tripled the difference of short movement. You got your supplies and you're less tired and you're more ready to fight. So cavalry does still almost have a place in World War II, but it is getting a bit too much. Oh, you're also inside of a T-72, getting through the last of these things here. One really small. Yeah. No, Soviets, I do know, I forget what it is, but did have a very short height requirement. You had to be short to be a tanker in the Soviet Union. So I presume that continues today with the Russians. Russians use lots for logistics and economy. Yeah, absolutely, pickle. Used for a lot of stuff. Gamer stability is getting low. Yeah, we'll see about that in a bit here. And we had to tow LMGs per squad in my time. 2 times 1,100 bullets. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. And this is one thing. The U.S., again, outside of specialty forces, did not use animal transport. And even when they're considered an infantry division, they might not have enough trucks to move the whole division. Everybody get on trucks, get all your supplies, everybody on trucks, and let's go driving, driving across wherever. And no, but they could shuttle, pick up a battalion, drop it off, turn around, go pick up another battalion, or pick up supplies. And so even though the infantry may be walking, nearby there's some trucks full of ammo. And the trucks may not be getting within, rifle and machine gun fire distance of the battle, maybe within artillery, but if you're behind a hill, no one knows you're there. So they're not getting in, in the line of fire most of the time, or they're trying not to, but close enough so that, a few men from each company or whatever could go back and get more ammo. That was the American way of fighting, much more so than the Germans or the Italians. The Italians use lots of horses as well. And that is one thing you have to realize that really keeps the Italians are not motorized, but they're also mostly not horse, because horses need too much water. I know you can have horses in the desert, and there were some around. There definitely were, but not many. And what really part of the limitations for the North Africa campaigns for both sides is the amount of motor transport and supplying it with fuel. So even though the division may be walking, you still maybe need to daily get a truck with water to the troops, however much water you can get to them, because they're not necessarily the division itself isn't moving from well to well to well to well. They're moving along, and trucks are bringing up water or bringing up food or bringing up ammo. And that is partially because Italy does not have that many trucks overall, that they limits the size of the North Africa campaign is the ability to motorize supply in North Africa. And it is overwhelmingly motorized, as far as I can tell from film and other sources, in North Africa. But that doesn't mean that they weren't walking a lot. It just means they weren't using horses much as a logistics thing in North Africa because of that lack of water. Well, on that point, we're going to end this episode. I may have to cut this in half because it's gone a long time. But thank you, everyone. I really do appreciate it. I will be back with more, more Hearts of Iron.